Hello, Pantheon, or Pantheon, or Python. How do you decide to write a class in C++ or make a blueprint? Basically, I try to think about how much trash something is going to generate. If it's a bunch of math and complicated stuff that I need to really mess around with, I'll probably write that in C++. If it's a bunch of actual just game logic, I try to put that in blueprints, so blueprints can get all kind of screwed up and lame, and try to keep C++ land a little bit more organized. So if it's an experiment, I'll probably do it in blueprints. If it's some big complicated system, I'll probably do it in C++. I don't know. I don't know if I have the best decision making on that one though. I just need to actually just do some debug logging here. This will just kind of get messy for now. You use Unity for a while, you find it difficult to write a descriptive class or methods in Unreal Engine when writing code. Well, by code I assume you mean C++. Well, I can kind of show you what I do. Basically, for some things, I will set up a whole bunch of C++ code. I guess one example is the level actor, which has like a whole bunch of voting options and player state stuff. So like I did all the voting stuff inside of C++ just because it's kind of tricky to do like voting math and things like that, where it's kind of like, all right, I need to pick which thing got voted on by which players and make sure not to mess with the bots who are in there. They can't vote, and then have different, types of voting and different ways to win a vote, such as like minority, majority, 2/3, and unanimous, and all these like switches that get real complicated in blueprints. Yeah, I'd throw that in C++ and just deal with that. And that just kind of works how I would do it. Other than that, just blueprint land otherwise. Hello, Nigel Meister. This will be unlocking as animation finished. Just debugging some of my abilities for the network stuff on doing an aim shot. You are a god. What am I working on? I am working on this game. It is called Dashkin. And it's a high-speed platformer. There's a multiplayer component, there's a single-player challenge component, and then there is a single-player story component to the game. And right now I'm working on the networking component, the networking stuff for an aimed shot, where you basically charge up, latch onto the ball, teleport to the ball, aim for a couple seconds, and then hit the ball in the direction you're aiming. The UI for the aim isn't set up for this thing, so I'm aiming, but you can't see it yet. And it's taking a while to start up because I'm starting up another client, and like the dedicated server is also running locally. Alright, so let's look at our output. Unlocking as animation is finished. Animation is finished again. Yeah, I think I just had I wasn't setting the flag for that thing. Unlocking as animation is finished. Unlocking as ball is unfrozen. Okay, so we didn't hit because of some reason there. Let's try to repro that. Great, now it's being difficult to repro. Means it's going to be an error with networking of some kind. Yeah, unlocking his animation, unlocking his ball is unfrozen. So something set frozen to false, and we didn't hit as a result. It's going to be that the server unfroze the ball. Yeah, unlocking his animation is finished. Okay. So the server actually came in and is running the on animation end, so it's the yeah, we need to put this is locally owned here, and basically this needs to be called right in our on animation end. So we're playing the animation on the server, but basically stop aim shot is going to unfreeze the ball. It shouldn't unfreeze the ball unless that's where our bug is. Pretty sure you've seen this before in the early stages. You maybe understand for what I've been trying to figure out in a month. Alright, well, I'm glad somehow my mad ramblings have helped somewhat. Alright, so on animation end. Still needs to call these things, but the difference is stop aimed shot should only unfreeze the ball if it's locally owned. But the problem is going to be that we need to actually tell the server that we need to unfreeze this thing. So what do we have for that? We need an actual unfreeze. So, God, this is just becoming a mess, isn't it? This is unfreeze. There it is. Alright, so we got our player proxy, and we've also got our frozen ball. Okay, so we can kind of chuck that up there, and then we can have this come in down here. So basically the bots on the server aren't going to do an RPC, but other things are. Alright, so we got to save that, do that stuff, and we need to make this a reliable thing. So the unfreeze is only going to get called from the client or the locally owned object for a bot. Alright, let's go in with our second point. Yeah, one of the things that I usually try to do with you're talking about like blueprints versus C++ is usually games are divided into kind of core engine code and then gameplay code. And when you have something like blueprints, or you have something like Lua script, or you have something like JavaScript or Python, and then another language like Java or C++ or C or whatever, if you can keep all your gameplay code pretty much over in the scripting language, it really helps organize stuff, and also helps that when you do another project later, not just a bunch of trash, right? It's real easy to just be like, oh yeah, everything inside of blueprints, just don't worry about. That's all gameplay stuff. Or everything inside of Lua or whatever, don't worry about it. This guy latches onto the ball and I punch him, unlatches from the ball. Alright, so let's see. If this guy latches on, but then I go punt it away, it doesn't do anything. latch. And but the problem is that unlocking his ball is frozen. Is what we need. This guy needs to charge up. Doesn't look like it's unfreezing the ball with our hit. So when we do our defend ability, when we go do this server defend hit ball, there's no unfreeze. Yeah, unfreeze all. Forgot to implement this one. Let's double check the others. So unfreeze, 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 unfreeze. Yeah, alright. So let's see if it does what it's supposed to. You basically just write the functions in C++ and use them in blueprints. It depends. Like, I use a lot of static helper methods, so I try to make blueprints as easy as possible to use and try to put off any, more specific operations in C++ land. So, yeah, it would pretty much be, if I wanted to write a complex function like hit ball, I'd probably want to put that in C++ if I could, and then just have in blueprints like if players, if the player is holding down the A key, play the animation, call play animation, call hit ball, and that sort of stuff. Alright, so this guy will tether. That guy knocked it away. Looks like it worked. Alright, so this guy will tether. That guy will tether. And let's see, the first guy to tether should win. So let's try it again. You tether, you tether. Yeah, it's looking like it's working. So we'll go over and tether again. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I just can't think of them. I don't know. Are you learning to program and use Unreal or? Nice. Okay, so that works. Let's see. Watch. I should. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to have this guy come over here and then tether onto the ball, but then quit. Okay, good. It quit without like the ball being forever stuck. That's cool. Alright, so that's working. Let me see. I need to write down some other stuff. Wall jumping improvements. Jumping after being stunned. There's also wall jump, vertical velocity. Okay, so that works. So I think that's that thing over the network, so let's switch back to not being over the network. Well, actually, no. First, let's not run a dedicated server. Let's play as the listen server and make sure stuff works as well. So, works with dedicated server. Does it work with a listen server? They are different things. You're learning Unreal Engine. You're an experienced developer, but the lack of documentation for Unreal Engine makes it difficult. Like, how should I know what a function does when there is no explanation in the docs? Yeah, well, that's one thing that's nice about working with Unreal 4 is that you actually have access to the code. So if there isn't documentation on it, you can at least crack open the code and go look at, like, you know, what the hell does this Kismet function actually do? So I would ask the question: are you building it from source for Unreal Engine, or using the pre-built installed editor? Because I would recommend grabbing the source off of GitHub and compiling it yourself. It's more difficult, of course, to do that and more setup, but it makes it so you can actually go look at everything and poke around, and not just the headers or whatever. Now, that's one nice thing about, you know, versus Unity or whatever, where you don't have the source. Let's see if I can get this guy to join in here. And I can actually show off. This is the gadget that for aiming that the artist put together. I'm just using the keyboard on this thing so that I can actually aim pretty good. So does this guy see me properly? Like it? Not this guy. so that. Alright, so it works. You don't need to compile from source to get the code. There's an options panel in Real Epic where you can manage UE4 versions and let you install source code as well as debugger symbols. A bit simpler if you need. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, you can get the code and all that. I just find yeah, I mean basically if you don't want to go learn, if you don't want to mess with the code, at least get the code. So you don't have to screw around with a whole bunch of stuff. That's as for what other people do, like I'm working with the Maelstrom guys. You may know if you're on Steam and you play battle royale games. They have their game Maelstrom, which is a naval combat game, and they do things a bit differently than I do. Mainly, one of the reasons is they're a team of like 7 to 10 people. But kind of how they have everything architected is they've got their source for everything that they put together for their game, and they pretty much have a C++ class for everything that they put in blueprints. So, for instance, if they have a ship, they've got Maelstrom ship, and then they have the various ships in a blueprint land, so they always have a C++ class and a blueprint class for everything, and they do a bunch of inheritance sort of stuff to try to keep everything all organized. And I haven't been nearly as strict about that sort of thing, but if you're working on a larger project, that's probably good discipline, just so you don't have to go reparent a whole bunch of shit if you all of a sudden need to go C++ify something that a designer put together. So somebody goes makes a sea monster and you need pathfinding in it, and you're not going to do that in blueprint land, you're going to go do it somewhere else. Thank you for following, Precognist. Welcome. Alright, so I've got this actually working, which is pretty cool. So what would I want to do next with this? I want to get the HUD working for the normal level. So when I'm in the normal level, I'm going to want the widgets there actually working. So let's go to arena level. Let's turn off our missions. So we've got a web window. We've got others. Thanks for following. A Python. And we don't have our gadget showing up here because we don't have our screen being created. So let's start. Reparenting is the worst. I guess they have some stuff built in to show you where things are disconnected. Maybe it's, yeah, I'm using 4.16, and it's kind of, if you want to change the structure of stuff after it's made in blueprints, you're just going to have to pay the pounds of flesh that it takes to do that. It can just be annoying, and it sucks, especially if you screwed up, if you're trying to make something multiplayer and you don't have the right authority on stuff, like me, or you didn't understand Unreal very well, so you started writing all your logic inside of a U object instead of inside of like an actor component, because you're like, oh well, it's a U object, blah 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 blah. No, that's not. Well, nothing about what you want. Which is why I've got like this player logic object with all this crap in it. And then I've got like the player controller with even more crap, but it's really just like a whole bunch of pass-through events and shit. And it's like, I dug the hole, I'm gonna fill it with water and tears and salt, and just it'll work, but it's not gonna be pretty. Way to go. Welcome, Tim. Successfully got the networking done for the aim shot ability, so we'll be able to use that in multiplayer games now. Next thing is to get it so there's the UI there in the multiplayer games. Then, because what needs to happen is I need to go test this on the server with Adam. With him being in Australia, the latency is gonna tell us if it's a good ability. It'll be interesting to see how it works. So, where does this thing actually get made? And by this thing, I'm talking about the UI screen. So that's our widget, for our aim widget. And it currently gets updated and put into the right location. We've got our scores all set up. The rest of this shit is... The question would be, should I make another UI screen that's separate and use that, or should I see what we do right now? Or we need to learn that replication only works one layer deep, and object composition past that won't work for network games. What? Replication only works one layer deep, so what, on the top level components, and if you're going down there? The big thing with replication that really smacked me in the face was I wanted to do this history system, and I found out very horribly that like arrays aren't replicated and shit like that, and I was like, but I want like a buffer of data, and it's like, no. Like, fuck. So things like that, where, you know, the next game that I make in Unreal 4 is going to be a lot better organized. And I put together a lot of diagrams for this thing, like the my multiplayer notes diagram is just absolutely ginormous when I was going through what the hell everything actually does. I was like, how does replication actually work? And I made this giant thing here with like, well, there's the client, the server, and another client, and they all have the game instance, and then the game mode is only on the server, and then we have the game state, and then that's replicated to the game state on all the clients, and then we have player controllers, one per player controller, but they don't have the other player controllers, but they do have the other player states. So we gotta, you know, make sure that those are there, and then pawns are on both sides, and all that sort of shit. It was like, making this, you know, tank of a game life cycle diagram. And then like the server startup and client startup flow I went through, I was like, what the hell actually happens? Like, you start the process, we load static classes, and like we just do all of this shit to actually like the, you know, the player joining something. Remember when maps weren't supported by the editor? I do not remember when maps were not supported by the editor, so thankfully I do not have those horrifying memories. When I was on a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, I was at Molten Games down in San Diego. We were using Unreal 4 before it would actually came out to the public, and I was doing server stuff then, so I didn't use the actual editor. But then there are like all sorts of shit where garbage collection didn't work properly in anything. So you'd shove stuff inside of a like a T map with a U property on it, and it just wouldn't fucking work. Like it'd get garbage collected and stuff like that. So they just ran into massive problems where they had to deal with it. That was before Slate was even really in there. Like they were still trying to negotiate with Scaleform to try to get UI for this thing. Question is, where are we actually making our widget? Alright, so we got make in stage HUD, which is being called by our post and pre-stage countdown screens. Should I just make a new HUD? That's like a temporary sort of thing. I think I probably should, just to keep it simple. So let's make a new screen here. And yeah, we'll just do it that way. Let's just call this temp multiplayer HUD. You took your advice and you have a meeting with a small game studio in about an hour. Oh Jesus, what horrible advice? I don't even remember. I blacked out. What was it? Don't work with other people, or forget exactly. But don't work with people temporarily or for free or whatever. I don't know. To talk to someone rather than just look for a freelancer. Yeah, it's like that makes a lot of sense because you really need a good relationship with people, and people in the game industry are pretty nice most of the time. So they're usually good people to know. I take no responsibility. Yeah, exactly. Here's the disclaimer. I don't know anything. I'm gonna go throw this off on my other screen. We need to go to user created. We want our aim widget. So let's add our aim widget here. Let's wrap it in our size box and then wrap that in our scale box. Size box needs to be the whole thing. This is what, 1650 by 1080. And this is everything with a 0, 0. Alright, the actual aim widget itself needs to be centered. The pivot of whatever. So we're finally home. Now you continue work just after you get all the food going. Very good. Let's see. Screen size should be... Where the hell is custom? Should be screen size and custom. Yeah, there. That's better. Oh man, learning Slate stuff sucks. I did not really appreciate things. Alright, so if we go to this guy, we need to go to update our aim widget is a variable, which it is here, so we need to make an update function. So let's go make an update, which we're calling on tick, is what it looks like. And we'll copy our code here, get local player proxy, default actor. All right, we need default width, default height, and target aspect. That is that our width and height is 1650 and 1080. And this is just the code that moves this thing and centers it on the actual player. Let's see, does it replace it? Nope, but at least it is angry at me. Can I just drag you onto these things? No, that wouldn't be anything other than convenient. Of course you can't do that. Just make sure I didn't screw it up, because I did screw it up just previously. Okay, so we're gonna need our temp multiplayer HUD, and we're gonna need to make that. So that's gonna be our HUD. We will need to make this guy, and then we need to like bind to a few events with this backing object to make sure we actually turn it off in the right place. So if we go to our arena level, we should have under missions a in-stage HUD widget. is this all pissed about? Good job breaking all those connections. And then not telling anybody about it. Alright. Alright, so all we have to do now is go to our level edge actions, and we want to set in server set in-game, we want to call make multiplayer HUD, and then we want in game over, and pretty much everything else is where we call destroy multiplayer HUD. Wait, do we even care? Like, that widget will disappear on its own. Like, it checks if you're aiming or not. So, we can just always have that up. Well, let's just see if it works then. Yeah. So it does its thing. It's off. So let's take a look at what the differences between our HUDs and our pieces are. So our aim widget is blah blah, center position is set, our pivot is set, our translation is like so. Our aim box, our size box is fill 1 2 enabled. We don't have a height override. Okay, so that's probably what was going on. Our scale box is set to scale to fit, zeros all around. Alright. We'll see what this does. It still doesn't look right. So let's see, is it centered on our other? No, it's doing the same thing, so it looks like probably the asset itself is what's wrong. Yeah, so the asset is just gonna be doing something that Adam updated. So let's take a look at the widget. Yeah, you can see the rotation of this is just not right. Let's see why. So we have the donut. When we rotate this, let's take a look. The angle of literally everything is changing. Like even the circle is off. Let's see, the pivot, do math for this, right? So if this thing is 512 by 512 and the entire thing is how large? Yeah, he changed the total width of the entire object. So that's what's going to be going on here. So is there a way to figure out what the damn size is? Of this thing? Look at the size of a widget in UMG. It's a little long one. Basically, it's a widget within a container like a vertical box. Make that container a variable so you can get its size. I mean, I don't want to have to compute this manually. So it's 828 plus 16. So that's 844. So our pivot is going to be this 256 out of that. So it's going to be what, 256 divided by 844. It'll be 0.303. There we are, that's looking right. So I'll just need to make sure to tell Adam, hey, check shit. Aim widget needs to check those rotation pivots because they need to rotate properly. I just figured out that maybe the most important thing in C++, you only need to look at the header file and that's the whole documentation, whereas the other programming languages is not feasible. You just made me not give up on learning E4. Yeah, that's one nice thing. Header files are basically about documenting, the agreement with, the rest of the programs that use you. So that's why like you'll ship header files for libraries, but you won't ship the libraries, or you won't ship the code, the CPP files. That's also why they've got that whole public-private module thing set up in Unreal. Like, you don't really need to look at how it actually does it. You really only need to care about what it does. At the same time, that whole thing with C++ where, the header files have declarations for things and the CPP have implementation, can also be pretty frustrating if things are hidden or if there's implementation inside of the header files. And that gets even more screwed up when you start taking templates into account, because those are, not in the those are in the header because they need to create the CBP at, you know, link time. Alright, well this is me going into a multiplayer game and being able to use this ability. That's not bad. That means it works. And just a temporary HUD with stuff that we can slap on it should be fine. And of course I set up the rigging for the next caverns level with cool caverns as usual. I wonder what happens. This thing doesn't have goals, does it? At least I don't think it does. Yeah, it doesn't have goals. So what's it gonna do? Yeah, it's just like yeah, I don't know where to teleport anything. Like where am I supposed to go? So why don't we just, is it checked out? I can add goals to it. I think Adam's been working on Bob's Burgers, so I should be able to go add that. No, they're not caves, they're caverns. Very specific difference. I don't know, what the hell is the technical difference between caves and caverns? So if I want goals, I'm going to want the goals from maybe the caverns 1. I'll snag those and copy them.